Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's really good to see everybody here. I know people are, some are just joining now, I think from the waiting room. So I'll give it 1 second so that we can have everybody in the room who's waiting. Perfect, Josh. Good to see you.
Hello, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Good to see you.
And Shavua Tov to you already.
Thank you, yes.
Yeah. It's pretty cool to have cross-continental services happening. Welcome to everybody else who's joining us. Josh, you want to say anything before I start Mincha?
Oh, just that it's great to be here, and Shabbat Shalom to everybody from Florida. Hope everybody's doing well, and great to see you from across the country. And I hope it was a restful Shabbat for everybody, and I'm excited to do some learning with you later and enter into the new week.
Great. So we're managing this cross-continental Zoom of services, and welcome to anybody who's on YouTube also, by having me lead Mincha. And then once I'll pop this over to Josh to read some Torah for us, and I'll finish up Mincha. And then the rest is in your hands, Josh. So I guess I'll get us started. Ashrei is on page 214 in Lev Shalem, 226 in the Slim Shalom, 558 in the older Sim Shalom. Ashrei Yushvi Veitecha, Ojalilu Chasela, Ashrei Shekacha Lo, Ashrei Ham Shadonai Elohav, Tila LeDavid. Tehillat Adonai yidaber pi, vivarech kol basar shem kodsho leolam va'ed, v'anachnu nivarech yah, mi'et haviat olam hallelujah, uva l'tzion goelu shavem fesh abi Yaakov, neum Adonai. Ve'ata kadosh yoshev tehillat Yisrael, v'kara zel ze ve'amar, kadosh 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 Adonai tzavot, meloch ul haaretz kevodo. V'tisahini ruach, v'shma acharai kol rash gadol, baruch kivod Adonai mimekomod. Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. ויבטחו בך יודעי שמך, כי לא עזבת דורשך אדוני, אדוני חפץ למען צדקו, יגדיל תורה ויאדיר. That concludes the opening portion of Mincha for Shabbat. And so we turn to our Torah service, which is really a Torah reading. And Josh, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you. And I also just want to thank Rabbi Chorny again, since I'm on this side of the country, for being there in the service to anchor us in the sanctuary. So thank you for that.
It's really beautiful in here right now. So I'm glad to be here in the peace and calm.
Oh, good. So our Torah reading is from Chaye Sarah, and it begins on, let me just pull up the sheet that has the exact start. Sorry, I have a lot of different files up on a small computer.
It's on page 127 in the Eitz Chaim, and it starts with chapter 23 of the book of Bereshit at the very beginning of that chapter.
Perfect. Thank you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Vayehi chaye Sarah 100 shana ו20 shana ו7 shanim shnei chaye Sarah v'tamat Sarah b'kiryat L'Kiryat Arba, Hi Chevron, Be'eretz Canaan, Vayavo Avraham, Lisvod L'Sarah, V'livkota, Vayakom Avraham me'al Pnei Meto, Vaydaber el Bnei Chet Lemor, Ger v'toshav Anochi Machem, Tenu Lihi Achuzat Kever Imachem, Ve'ekbera Meti Milfanai, Vayanu Bnei Chet, Et Avraham Lemor Lo, Shamayinu Adoni, Nesi Elohim Ata B'tochenu, B'mivchar Kevarenu, Kavor et Metecha, Ish mimenu et kivro, Lo yichle Mimcha Mikvor Metecha, Vayakom Avraham v'yishtachu le'am haaretz livnei chet. Vaydaber itam lemor, im yesh et nafshechem likbor et meti milfanai shamauni Ufiguli Befron ben Sochar, Vaitan li et Marahat Hamachpela Asher Loho Asher Bikze Hasadehu Bechosef Maleh Yidnena li Betochem Lachuzat Kaver. Ve'efron Yoshev betoch bnei chet, Vayanef Efron hachiti et Avraham be'oznei bnei chet, Lecho b'sha'ar iro lemor, Lo Adoni shamaheni, Hasadeh natati lach, Ve'ham ara, Asher bo lecha netatia le'ene v'nei ami natatia lach kavor metecha v'yishtachu Avraham livnei am haaretz vaydaber el Efron be'oznei Am haaretz lemor, ach imata lu shamayini, natati kesef hasadeh kach mimeni, ve'ekbera et meti shama, vayan Efron et Avraham lemor lo, Adoni shamayini, eretz arba me'ot shekel kesef beni uvencha mahu vet metcha kavor vayishma Avraham el Efron vayishkol Avraham lefron et hakesef asher diber be'oznei bnei chet arba me'ot shekel kesef over la socher.
Shakoach. A great beginning to the willfully misnamed Parsha Chayei, the bargaining over the cave of Machpelah, and the Kvod Hamet, the dignity that Avram wants to give to his wife. It's beautiful to hear how long that passage is when chanted. It was a substantial passage. In Shakoach. And we'll finish up the Torah service on page 222 or 233 or 571. Hashivenu Adonai Eilecha v'nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Oh, Chadesh, Chadesh, Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Oh, Chadesh, Chadesh, Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Oh, Chadesh, Chadesh, Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Renew our days as in days of old. The Shabbat afternoon Amidah begins on page 223. It's recited in a whisper privately. It's found on page 234 in Slim Shalom, page 574 in the older Sim Shalom Sidor. Einod, 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 page 231, 248, or 598. Aleinu leshabeach la'adon ha'kol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל עמונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. Einod, 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 שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בכובעים מרומים, הוא אלוהינו. Einod, 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 הם את מלכנו, אפס זולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבותה אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת, עינות, 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 עינות. אוקיי, דבר אחד. ככתוב בתורתך אדוני מלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. Say Mourner's Kaddish. You can find it on page 232 or 249 or page 600. And Josh, if you'll be my amen, then we can have an echo together. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah.
Amen.
Ve'alma divra kirute v'yamlich malchute v'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael v'agala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shemei rabbah mevarach le'alam olamei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal shemei dekudsha b'richu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiram bi'alma v'imru amen.
Amen.
Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Amen.
Before I turn this over to you, Josh, for teaching and learning, I just want to say farewell to everybody because I'm going to take a walk home so I can be prepared for our extra special Havdalah tonight. If you join us on the Zoom out of Shabbat link or Zoom into Havdalah, whatever it's called these days, you can join us for a Milaveh Malka. Concept behind that is that we escort the Shabbat queen out. It's possible to start Shabbat early and end Shabbat late. And I want to encourage you, if you're willing, to indulge yourself, to indulge the community a little bit, to linger in Shabbat, in the bubble of Shabbat, just a bit longer tonight. We're going to do some nigun and nourishment, some Torah learning together, a little meditation, and also some time to just be with each other before we let go of Shabbat and go back into the fray of another week. So I want to wish you all a Shabbat Shalom for the rest of it and the extension of it. And Josh, this is yours.
Thank you so much. Shabbat Shalom. As I said before, it's so great to see you all here. I'm going to screen share the document for the text study today. If you were able to access it before Shabbat, great. Otherwise, you can look on the screen. Post disabled attendee screen sharing. I'm actually not sure I'll be able to screen share, but hopefully you were able to access that beforehand. Otherwise, I'll be reading them out loud, so you'll be able to get them that way. So traditionally, we would go ahead and continue on to Chaye Sarah for the text study, but I wanted to linger on Vayera, I guess in honor of what Rabbi Chorny just said about being able to linger in Shabbat a little longer before moving on to the next. So, because there's just in every Parsha, obviously, so many beautiful things, but there was a lot in Vayera that I just wanted to spend some more time on. So I titled the text study "Captives on the Carousel of Time," which I'm stealing from Joni Mitchell, but it's okay because that's the first text. So I'm going to read it first, and as I read it, I want you to, if you haven't already read ahead on the sheet to know where I'm going with this, think about what part in Vayera this might be invoking for you, and then I'll go ahead and read the text that I'm thinking about when I read this song from Vayera, and I want to ask you, what connections do you draw from them? So this is from her song, Circle Game, and the chorus goes, "And the seasons, they go round and round, and the painted ponies go up and down. We're captive on the carousel of time. We can't return. We can only look behind from where we came and go round and round and round in the circle game. Are there any guesses as to which moment in Vayera I'm going with this? I'm wondering if yeah, Gary. Oh, sorry. Did you raise your hand, Gary? Okay, great.
I just couldn't get everything set up. No, it's the whole passage of a life. It's always a change of time. And to me, that's the power of the thing. It's another generation that's ending from that standpoint.
Beautiful. So the Sarah's death, I imagine you're referring to, right? That's what we start with, and the passage of time, Abraham burying his wife, Sarah. Not the part that I was thinking of, but a perfect connection as well. Any other guesses of just what this might invoke for you?
Well,
yes, please.
We talked about last week, but also the sending Hagar and Ishmael away versus, and then the finding of Isaac, potentially killing Isaac.
So this is what I love about. Actually, can you say a little more about what the connection is for you there?
Okay. I guess, well, in both cases, it's a son who is God is telling Abraham to do something with, that's could be seen as not, being, I don't know what you'd say. Well, in terms, could be life, could be taking the life of, because, of both being sent into the desert or being a sacrifice. So.
Absolutely. Right. So there's a lot of transitions. There's a lot of passing of a life or the threat of losing a life. So I think it absolutely speaks to all those themes. And it's always the strength of great songs and literature and obviously our Torah that we could look at the same passage and come up with so many different things. The moment that I'm thinking about is if you scroll down, if you have the sheet in front of you, if you printed it out from Bereshit 1926, the moment where Sodom and Gomorrah is being destroyed. And before this happens, the angels who are sent by God tell Lot and his wife and family as they're escaping, don't look back. When you run, when you escape, flee from the destruction, right? Abraham negotiates with God beforehand. If you find, all the way down to, if you find 10 good people, I won't destroy it for the sake of the 10. And that's still an impossible task. But God allows Abraham to save his nephew Lot and his family. The angels say to Lot and his family, as you'll run and flee, but don't look back, just go. And Lot's wife looks back and is turned into a pillar of salt. It says, Lot's wife looked back and she thereupon turned into a pillar of salt. V'tabet ishto ma'acharav v'tehi netziv melach. What possible connections there? Can you justify my choice? Why am I choosing this, and why did it make me think of that song? Any thoughts? Yeah, Marshall. Marshall, sorry, you're muted. Can't hear you.
Okay. Your song says that we can't return, we can only look behind from where we came. And so she looked behind. So the question is, why did she look behind? We don't know anything about Lot's wife. Maybe she was actually a resident of Sodom or Amorah beforehand. Mm-hmm. That's where her family was. And remember, who had going back one parsha, Abraham was told, Lech lecha me'artzecha me'moladecha me'beit avicha, to leave from these three places. Nobody said to Lot's wife, you should leave also.
Beautiful, right? So absolutely. Quite literally, she looks back. And I'm very glad you raised that question, because that's the question I want to pose to you all now about her looking back. We only have limited information from the pshat of the text. So I did bring a commentary from Sforno on his reason. But first, I want to ask you, first of all, this turning back, I think it's something that we can all relate to, right? If we were asked, like you said, Marshall, if I got what you're saying correctly, you sort of point to a little bit of a, I don't know if unfairness is too strong a word, but Abraham was prepped for this, right? God says to leave, gives this command, and it's still a stark transition, but when it's coming directly from God, there's a sense of, okay, but it doesn't seem like there's that same process for Lot and Lot's wife, particular sort of this leave now. It's an angel who says it, and it's also sudden. And there isn't this great promise like God gives to Abraham that you'll be a great nation, I'll bless you, and the nations will bless themselves by you. This is just a get out and go. And so you kind of can't help but really empathize with her for turning back at the life that she knew, at everything, at her home, her neighbors, everything that's being burnt to the ground. And she's turned to a pillar of salt for it. So I wonder, what do you make of this moment? Do you just feel totally for her? Like the punishment doesn't seem to fit the crime here, or, she did violate the angel's word, a divine order, not to turn back. So there's certainly grounds for something. But what do you make of the sentiment behind this moment of her turning back and the result? The fact that she was turned into a pillar of salt, and what can we pull from that about the nature of looking back in our own lives and how that can impact us?
Well, I just want to say that I think everybody would look back. I think the only way you could avoid looking back is if God talked to you directly. I'm sorry, but it's what we call in the law an attractive nuisance. Like you see something like a burning whatever or an accident. Why does everybody look at it? Because you can't help but look at it. That was my first reaction to it. Whether the punishment fits the crime, I don't know. I mean, turned into a pillar of salt, that seems a little excessive. But on the other hand, we don't know anything about her, so maybe it's fitting. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you're all pointing accurately to this lack of information about Lot's wife. We don't even have her name, right? She's Ishto, or Eshet wife. Like we Eshet Lot. We don't have her name. So there's a lot we don't know about her. And like you pointed out, it's human nature. It's a natural reaction, an instinct. So it seems harsh to be punished for an instinct. But if we go beyond the sort of judging the judgment that was cast on her, if we understand this to be commentary on our own lives, because I think there's something extremely powerful about this notion. And I see you, Joanna. I'm gonna call on you next, but of the desire to look back, but also when we do it, how it can be paralyzing. And I just want to say, I think, Brant, what you said about everybody, there's nothing wrong with looking back. In fact, as Jews, memory plays as a huge theme in Jude, right? Remember, never forget the Holocaust, Zichronot, and the High Holiday Service. All of this about memory, it's so ingrained in us to remember and turn back. I mean, tradition, as conservative Jews, tradition is an extremely vital part of our identity. So it can't be an indictment of looking back. Looking back is something that we're encouraged to do, and we do all the time. So I don't think that's
But if
the
looking
issue.
back is if looking back paralyzes you, if looking back holds you back, if looking back doesn't allow you to go forward, if by looking back you are actually going back, maybe that's the problem.
Great.
It's true that we all look back. I mean, gee, Lord knows I have a checkered history, but the reality is that we take our history and we use it to propel ourselves forward, hopefully in a better way. You could look at it by the term looking back as being paralyzed by looking back and unable to move forward. And that's why she turned into a pillar of salt.
Right. So thank you for bringing that distinction. And I haven't forgotten your hand, Joanna, so I'm going to get you in just a second. But thank you for bringing that distinction, because I think you're absolutely right. There's a difference between being informed by our past and being captives to it. And it's easier said than done. I mean, I can't help but dwell on the past, and not just for the major thing. I have in third grade, my best friend Julian didn't give me a birthday present in third grade, and I think about it every day. So it's very hard to like imagine the things that really weigh on us from our past and the actual traumas and the things. So certainly the past can be traumatizing and paralyzing. But again, I don't think it's about, and I don't think this Parsha is saying not to confront your past, to face down your demon. I think we certainly should have a healthy relationship to our past, not to avoid it, not to be in denial of it. I think we wouldn't want to venture down any dangerous roads that are unhealthy. But I think this distinction you're bringing about being informed by the past, having a healthy relationship to it, versus being paralyzed by it, and that being an impediment to progress and forward movement. Joanna, sorry that it's been a bit.
No worries. I just wanted to say that in my mind, I'm linking sort of, into this week's Parsha and a very famous midrash we have about this week, and kind of reading that same kind of midrash back onto Lot's wife. So there's a midrash that Sarah passed away when she heard the devastating news that Yitzchak had been sacrificed, and the word hadn't gotten, to her that, the plan had been changed at the last moment. And I sort of wonder a little bit, because if you read the text carefully, it doesn't say that Lot's wife was punished. It's just that she turned into a pillar of salt. And there are so many details missing from this story that I wonder if what happened is she looked back. She was so devastated by what she saw that it caused her to have a heart attack and pass away. And Netziv to me is connected to the word that we see over and over in Genesis about when significant things happen in a place, a matzeva is put there, like a monument of some kind. And so if the fact that she turned into a Netziv Melech wasn't necessarily the punishment, but it was a monument to remember this event that happened in this place.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah, that actually, I had a visceral reaction to that. It gave me chills, because absolutely, Nitzavim, right? A Mitzav, and that link to history too. You not only tied it to Chaye Sarah, but also to this theme of the past, that she became a representative of the past too. I don't know if you're going there with that, but to become a monument, she herself is a symbol of being frozen in time, or of the past. She becomes the past in a way, or something to commemorate what happened, or the past, that moment. There was a lot in what you just said, and I want to unpack all of it, and I want to give everybody a chance to address and respond to it, but I want to add Sforno's commentary to it, because I think this is also a very good segue to it. So Sforno agrees with all of you, saying that, and Ramban also agrees, that it doesn't seem like it's a punishment, right? You were saying nowhere does it say it's a punishment. Ramban and Sforno agree, they don't think it's a punishment either. Sforno says, the evil would catch up with you as soon as you interrupt your march away from it. This is precisely what happened to his wife when she ignored the instructions and looked behind. So I'm going to read that one more time. The evil would catch up with you as soon as you interrupt your march away from it. So I just want to open it up now for responses to what Joanna said, to what Brant said right before that, and to this, what Sforno is bringing to the conversation here.
So Forno's not saying it's a punishment. That's clear, right? He's saying this is the natural process of whatever happened to Sodom and Gomorrah. And if you cease your forward movement away, you're going to get caught up in it if you don't follow the instructions. But it's not because you turn back. It's just that natural process of destroying the city is going to get you.
Exactly right. I mean, I think the movie version of this is Indiana Jones, right? And he goes back for his hat, but basically there's if you slow down, it'll overtake you. So I think there's a little bit of that action movie, but if you go deeper, I think there's real commentary on our relationship to the past and its effect on us. That I don't think it's saying not to confront your past, not to have a healthy relationship to it, not to have memory be a big part of your life and even your everyday. But this idea that if you allow it to interrupt your march forward, how it can be paralyzing and how it can overtake you.
Isn't that what post-traumatic stress disorder is for soldiers in a certain sense? That they're exposed to such trauma that they can't move forward, and they without like severe intervention and therapies and stuff, that they constantly reliving the past, their past combat experiences, and they can't actually get forward in life. It just comes back and haunts them, a noise, a sound, Isn't that what we've come to understand about battle fatigue and stuff like that?
I think so. I mean, obviously not an expert in that, but I think that's a great example to bring. Also, what I hear you saying too is like, yeah, easier said than done too, right? Like for so many people, it's really not a choice of this, like, oh, they're getting caught up in that, like that, you suffer a trauma like that, or suffer mental illness as a result of that. It's easier said than done to not let your past interrupt your forward movement. So thank you. That thickens and deepens the conversation, because I don't mean to suggest, just keep marching on. I mean, truly more easier said than done. But at the same time, I do think that looking at this moment that way does offer a lot of inspiration about how we choose to march on uninterrupted by the evils of our past. That's not to say not informed by or having grown as a result of encountering the evils of the past, but to not be captive to it, if that's possible, insofar as that's possible. At least that's what I'm gleaning from it. I want to give you one more text, and then we'll continue on with Mari. But in addition to the song, there was another moment from literature that the pasuk evoked for me, which is from The Catcher in the Rye. At the very end, Holden takes Phoebe to the zoo, his little sister to the zoo, and then after that to this merry-go-round, to a carousel, and he's just watching her on the carousel with all the other kids. And if you remember, Holden, his purpose, he shares with us earlier in the book, that all he wants to do is be the catcher in the rye, that he wants to save kids from falling off the cliff into adulthood, into a world of phonies, into a world where, in the book, it's expletive, so I don't want, but FU is written on every wall, right? And he wants to save kids from encountering that kind of world, and especially his little sister. And that's all he wants to do all day, is be the catcher in the rye. But at the very end of the book, as he's watching her on this carousel, which again, here's the carousel imagery, the circle game coming back, he says this: "Then the carousel started, and I watched her go round and round. All the kids tried to grab for the gold ring, and so did old Phoebe. And I was sort of afraid she'd fall off the horse, but I didn't say or do anything. The thing with kids is, if they want to grab for the gold ring, you have to let them do it and not say anything. If they fall off, they fall off. But it is bad to say anything to them." I think what makes that moment so meaningful, at least in Holden's arc for development, is that it's sort of a departure from this, I want to be the catcher in the rye who saves them. It's in the quote, he says, if they fall off, they fall off. It's this acknowledgement that as much as you may want to, you can't stop time. Right, the carousel seems to represent, as Joni Mitchell says, the circle game. Time, the seasons going round and round, time progresses on, and there's nothing you can do to stop time or to stop the kids from grasping for the gold ring, which you could interpret as anything. Maybe it's hope, but as long as they are grasping for it, if they fall, they fall. It's a real change in Holden's thinking. But like a carousel, right, we go up and down. The painted ponies go up and down. We experience highs and lows of life. And at times, no matter how much you might want to scream at the operator to stop the ride, you can't. We continue on and we move forward. And I think that's where Lot's wife and what Sforno is bringing to us about not letting the evil of the past paralyze you or keep you from marching on ties in together. So I just want to leave room now for closing thoughts, remarks, disagreements. Any last thoughts before we move on to Mari? Marshall, yeah.
Yeah. I just want to comment about the Sephorno specifically, and with the source of the Sephorno was the translation. That is, there was a work done by Eliyahu Munk called Hachut HaMishulash, the threefold cord. Basically, you have a threefold cord; it cannot easily be severed one part from the other. Unfortunately, this is not a good translation of what the Hebrew says. So I want to, if I can, Josh, just to translate the Hebrew to see if that throws any additional light on the whole thing.
Please, but not if it undoes the whole argument, because then I have no leg to stand on.
So it is commenting on the statement, Al tabeit acharecha, or acharayach, do not look behind you. And then the Sephorno says in the Hebrew, Ki hara'a titparshet adayech, ki malechet acharayach, v'lo tazikach. For evil will extend itself to you as it is going after you, but it will not cause injury to you. Then it continues, Aval intit akev, but if you stop in any place, sort of an unplanned stopping, lehabit, to look, tibak bach, then this evil will attach itself. In effect, will become glued to you, right? We have to say, we got stuck to you, right? Kamosha karal ishto, as it occurred to his wife, Ka'amru vatahi netziv melach, that she became like a pillar of stone. So she in effect became paralyzed, and whether she actually died there, metaphorically or actually, we don't know, but she sure got stuck in one place. And you know that the Dead Sea doesn't support any life. And therefore, she in effect could not go forward. And she also couldn't go backwards.
Thank you for bringing that. And I apologize for not double checking to make sure that the translation was as accurate as possible. But I'm so glad you brought that in. It really deepens our understanding of it too, because it made, as you were saying that, it made me think of siyag around the Torah, right? That build a fence around the Torah. You're allowed to look in a mirror in Shabbat, but the rabbis say you're not, because if you look in the mirror, you might find a stray hair and you might want to pluck it. And if you pluck it, well, then you've broken Shabbat. So it almost seems to me like there's no harm per se in looking back. But the issue is if you look back, you might then stop. And if you stop, then the evil can overtake. I don't know if you got that as well, but that was sort of where my mind went to. So maybe, like Joni Mitchell says, I mean, we can only look back. There's no harm in looking back, and we shouldn't feel discouraged from looking back. But how we then respond to that, I think that's what's so interesting about this.
We have to look back, and then we have to keep on going forward. Right.
So I hope this brings some comfort or inspiration. It does to me every time I read it. And thank you, everybody, for enriching this conversation with all of your contributions. We'll turn now to Mariv, and we'll also do a quick Havdalah here, just in case you don't want to go to the bigger program, but I encourage you to do that if you are able. Okay, let me pull up the sheet with page numbers. Okay, Mariv begins, if you're in Lev Shalem, on 264, otherwise 281 or 200. Okay. Thanks for bearing with me. I need a bigger monitor. Okay. Vehu rachum yechaper avon v'lo yashchit, vehu bal lashiv apo v'lo ya'ir kol chamato, Adonai Hoshia hamelech yanenu v'yom koreinu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidbaro ma'ariv aravim. Uma'avir yom u'me'ivi laila, uma'avdil ben yom u'vein laila, Adonai tzavot shemo, el chai v'kayam tamidim l'chaleinu le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim. Avad olam beit Yisrael amcha avta. V'avtecha tasim imenu la'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. We turn to the Shema together. El Melech Ne'eman. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'haya. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor. Adonai Elohechem emet. Emet. Umalchuto bertzon kiblu alehem. Moshe Miriam v'nei Yisrael achanu shira b'simcha rabba v'mirchu la'am. Micha mocha ba'alim Adonai. Mika mocha nedavra kodesh. Noratilot osefele. Malchut charu v'necha b'kayam livnei Moshe. Ze'elianu ve'amru. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. V'ne'emar kifada Adonai et Yaakov. Uge'alo mi'ad chazak mimenu. Baruch ata Adonai. Ga'al Yisrael. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom. Ushmor tzeitenu v'einu l'chaim leShalom meta ve'ad olam. Baruch ata Adonai shomer amo Yisrael le'ahad. Baruch Adonai olam amen ve'amen. Baruch We're on 268 if you're in Lev Shalem. Vayar kol ha'am. Hosheinu Adonai Eloheinu. Baruch Adonai vayom. Ki amalchut shelcha hi u'omer ad timlach bechavod ki ein lanu melech ela ata baruch ata Adonai hamelech b'chvod tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed ve'al kol ma'asav. We'll skip Chatzi Kaddish and we'll go straight to the Silent Amidah, which begins on page 270 on Lev Shalem. Otherwise, it is on page 286 or 210. Ose shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imeru amen. Ose shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imeru amen. We continue on now with, we skip the Chatzi Kaddish, and we go, if you're on Lev Shalem 279, middle of the page. Vayinoam Adonai Eloheinu aleinu, u'ma'aseh yadeinu konena aleinu, u'ma'aseh yadeinu konenehu. Yoshev Beseter Elyon B'tzal Shaddai Yitlonan. Yikra'eni ve'enehu imo anochi v'sara achal tsehu ve'achabdehu orech yamim aspiehu ve'arehu vishuati orech yamim aspiehu ve'arehu vishuati. We turn to Atah Kadosh. If you're in Lev Shalom, it's 2:16. Ve'atah Kadosh Yoshev Tehilot Yisrael v'kara ze el ze ve'amar Kadosh 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 Adonai Tzvaot Meloch la'aretz kevodo. V'tisa'eni ruach ve'eshma acharai kol ra'ash gadol baruch kavod Adonai min komo. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. V'rachum yiraber bon lo yashchi v'irvad l'shiv l'pov lo ya'ir chacham atehud. V'yivtechu v'cha yodei shemecha ki lo azavta dorshecha Adonai Adonai chafetz l'man tzidko yagdil Torah ve'adir. We continue now with the Aleinu on page 281 if you're in Lev Shalem. Aleinu l'shabech l'adon hakol. Kakatu b'toratecha Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'nemar v'haya Adonai le'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yihye Adonai echad u'shemo echad. We turn to Kaddish Yatom, Mourner's Kaddish, on page 282. Is there anybody who's reciting Mourner's Kaddish that wants to lead us in it? And I'll say the amens.
I am a mourner.
Please.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah.
Amen.
Be'almat divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon uvichon uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehei
Yehei Shmei
Rabbah
Rabba Mevorach Le'olam Almei Almaya.
Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam olmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal. Shemei dekudsha b'richu.
Brichu.
Leila min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechamata. Da'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Titkabel. Yehei Shlama Rabbah min Shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'imramav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Amen. Yasher koach, everybody. We conclude Mariv, and we now start our Havdalah service, which is, if you're in Lev Shalem, page 283. I'm going to pause for just a second because I lit the candle, but the fan is making it a little dangerous. So give me 1 sec. I'll give you time to light your own candles if you have them and get your wine and spices. All right. Yanai na nai 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 yanai na nai nai yanai yanai na nai 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 yanai na nai nai yanai nai nai yanai na nai ya da da he da yanai na he da 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 he ya yanai na he ya da da he da ya da da he da da he da. Hine al Yeshuati, eftach velo epchad, ki ozi vezimrad yad Adonai vayehi li lishua, v'shavtem mahim besason, mimanei ha-Yeshua, l'Adonai ha-Yeshua, alamcha v'irchateka sehela, Adonai Tzivaot Imanu, Miskav lanu Elohei Yaakov Selah, Adonai Tzivaot, Ashrei Adam Boteach Bach, Adonai Hoshia, Hamelech Yaneinu Ve'yom Koreinu, La Yehudim. Hai Torah, v'simcha v'sason v'ikar kentei elanu, kos Yeshuot esa, u'v'shem Adonai ekra, yainanai 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 yainanai. Savri. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei besamim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei merei haish. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamavil ben kodesh lechol, ben or lechoshech, ben Yisrael la'amim, ben yom hashvi'i l'shet yemei ha'maaseh. Baruch atah Adonai, hamavdil ben kodesh lechol. I want to wish everybody a Shavua Tov. If you're able and want to log on to our other service for an elongated Havdalah, I invite you to do that now. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. Shavua Tov, a good.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov l'chulam.
Shavua Tov, Yashikah.
Thank you. Shavua Tov.
Josh, are you at your parents'?
Yeah.
Tell your dad I said hello.
I will, absolutely.
All right. Take care.
He sends his love.
Take care.